Hello family and welcome back. In today's tutorial I'll be guiding you on how to cut and sew this 720 degrees peplum wrap blouse with shawl neck and puff sleeves. It can be worn with either a trouser or skirt. So let's get started. So guys, this is the African print fabric I'll use. I've already cut two pieces for the front part and this here for the back part. To know the size you need, just measure quarter of your bust circumference plus about 4 inches allowance. And in order to start drafting, I'll fold the fabric with its wrong side, the top edge being my shoulder line, and I'll not be putting any zipper here at the center back. Now I'll start to take shoulder line to bust line measurement at 10 inches, then shoulder line to under bust line at 13 inches, and finally shoulder line to waistline or full length at 16 inches. I'll be adding just 1 inch stitching allowance here at the bottom edge. From there I'll start squaring out straight lines across this mark I put with the ruler. And then we'll go ahead to label the lines from the bust line, under bust line, and then the waistline. Having finished that, I want to go to the next thing, which is to measure half my shoulder measurement on the shoulder line. And I'm using 7 inches. I got that by dividing 14 by 2. Then I'll also measure the neck width at 3 inches starting from my center back. I'm only using 1 inch for neck depth, and with that I'm going to draw the neckline using a French curve ruler by joining these 2 points. Now starting from this mark, I'm measuring 0.5 inches for shoulder slope. Note that I'm not using 1 inch this time since I'm working on the fabric itself. Then I'll draw the shoulder slope from neck width to the mark. I want to work on the armhole part, and to do that, I'll start with finding my chest line from the shoulder slope, which is achieved by bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. I got mine to be 7.5 inches. That's where I'll mark, then square another line across. And that's my armhole depth or the chest line. Remember guys, I measured 7 inches on the shoulder line earlier. I'll carry forward the same measurement here on the chest line. Then we'll draw a vertical line connecting those 2 points with a ruler. And since I'm drafting the back, we'll not curve the armhole inwards as we normally do with the front. But I'm going to measure quarter of my bust circumference, which is bust circumference divided by 4. Then I'm going to draw the armhole curve with this French curve ruler like this. And that's it. I decided to use the armhole princess dart on this blouse. So I'll start by measuring my bust span on the waistline, which is 3.5 inches. That's 7 divided by 2. I'm going to measure the same also on the bust line. Then find the midpoint of the armhole depth, which is 7 divided by 2. I'll put a mark there as well. We'll now draw the princess dart by joining these 3 marks. First, I'll connect waistline mark to that on the bust line with a straight line. I'll use a French curve ruler from there to draw a smooth curve from the armhole midpoint to meet the vertical line. The next step guys is to add 1 inch on the chest line. We'll add the same also on the princess dart extension. Then I'll draw the new armhole curve with the curve ruler. This I'm doing in order to provide room when stitching the princess dart. Remember, I'll be cutting along the princess dart, then stitch it back again. I'll now measure quarter of my waist circumference on the waistline. For my case, it's 7 inches. I'm adding 1 inch for that stitching, plus another 1 inch stitching allowance. Total is now 2 inches. I'll also add 2 inches stitching allowance on the chest line. We'll now go ahead to draw the outline like this by connecting the mark on the chest line to that on the waistline. Up to this point guys, I'm only left with cutting on the outline, then the princess dart as well. and that's what I'm going to do. Here are the pieces after cutting out. I'll be stitching the sides to the center later after I'm done drafting the front part. And now for the front part, this is the fabric I'll use for it. I'll fold it in its wrong side first. And after folding, as you can see, I'll start to take measurements. Since it's a wrap top, I'm going to measure 6 inches from the folded area. And I'll measure the 6 inches twice in order to achieve a straight line. Then we'll draw a straight vertical line along these marks. This line I'm drawing indicates the new center front, guys. Moving forward, I'll take the vertical measurement starting with the shoulder line to bust line measurement. I'll use the top edge as the shoulder line, so I'll measure 10 inches. Then shoulder line to under bust line at 13 inches, and lastly shoulder line to waistline at 16 inches. I added 1 inch stitching allowance at the back. Here I'm adding 2 inches. This is to take care of the armhole princess that burst after stitching. I'll then square out straight lines across the marks. Having done that, this is my new waistline. I have the under bust line and then the bust line here. Now if you recall, I used 3 inches neck width on the back part. I'll use the exact measurement here too. And I'm not going to mark neck depth for now since it's a wrap top. This mark is to be joined to the corner edge with a line. And still on the shoulder line, I'll measure half my shoulder measurement again, come down by 0.5 inches. Then draw the shoulder slope the same way I did on the back part. Now I'm going to measure chest line at 7.5 inches, which will reduce once I stitch the dart bustier here, though I added 2 inches here at the bottom, meaning any shortage here is taken care of. I'll now draw the chest line across that 7.5 inches mark. And again from center front, I'll measure 7 inches I measured earlier. That's half my shoulder measurement. We'll connect these 2 points with a vertical line. For the front armhole, it's a little different. I'll measure the midpoint of the armhole depth mark. Also measure 0.5 inches inwards. Lastly, I'll measure quarter of my bust circumference on the chest line. And with that, I'll draw armhole curve with a curve passing through those 3 marks using a French curve ruler. Having finished that, I'll extend the waistline. Then from center front, I'll mark bust span with 3.5 inches on waistline and bust line as well. I already marked armhole midpoint earlier, so now I'm going to use these 3 points to draw the princess dart. I realized the mark on the bust line wasn't straight, that's why I'm measuring the second time in order to achieve a straight line. After that, I'll use a French curve ruler to draw a curve from armhole midpoint to the vertical line. On the armhole, I'm going to measure 0.5 inches on each side of the princess dart line. Then we'll measure another 1 inch up from the bust line. I'll now draw 2 new curves meeting the mark. After that, I'm also going to extend the first line outwards. And on the line, we'll measure 1 inch. I'm measuring another 1 inch on the chest line. So now I'm going to use a French curve again to draw the new armhole. This I'm doing to provide more room when stitching darts. Now I'll measure quarter of my waist circumference, that is the waist measurement divided by 4. Add 2 inches stitching allowance. Then we'll add 2 inches also on the chest line. After which I'll draw the outline from the mark on the chest line to that on the waistline. Now I want to work on the wrap part. On the center line, I'll measure 7 inches. You can decide to use 8 inches, that's still okay. Then I'll use a ruler to draw a line from neck width passing through the mark down to the bottom corner edge. I'll also curve the neckline a little bit with a curved ruler, and that's all. I'm now going to cut along the outline, then the princess dart too. This is what I have after cutting, and here is how they are stitched back. But before I do that, I'm going to trace out facings for every piece. I've done the tracing of the linings. I did that also on the back pieces, which I'll put aside since I want to show you how to stitch using the front pieces. First, I'll put right sides together. Then we'll head over to the sewing machine to stitch from the bottom edge to the top. I'll do the same also on the right side and on the lining pieces as well. So guys, I stitched the back pieces as you can see, also have given it a good press. I did the same also on the front part, and the wrap top is coming out well as it should. Now if you remember, when cutting I slashed out about 1 inch from armhole for that bustier, and with that the armhole has reduced in length. It's not the same length as the back armhole. I'll just align the front on the back part as I'm doing. I'm making sure they are well aligned, more so the shoulders. And having achieved an alignment, we'll trim off the front armhole using the back armhole, and this is why adding 2 inches down is necessary. The armholes are now same in length. I'll go to the next thing, which is to stitch the linings to the fabrics. Since this blouse has a shawl collar, I'll only stitch on the sides with about 0.5 inches on both sides. I'll leave the armhole region and the neckline open. I'll repeat the same on the front part, stitching only the sides with about 0.5 inches, leaving necklines and armholes not stitched. I'm done stitching the linings to the fabrics and iron them already. I like to iron at every stage after stitching. Now I'm going to work on the shoulders by joining the front to the back shoulders. I'll stitch the fabric separately. I'll just demonstrate by pinning them down. We'll head over to the sewing machine to stitch on the pinned area. And the same will apply on the linings, that is stitching them separately. We'll also pin first before I can head over to start stitching on the sewing machine. This will result to a neat finish on each side. After I'm done with that, we'll also join the right shoulder too. And then I'll stitch on the sides using measurements. Here is it after stitching as explained on the shoulders as well as on the sides. From here, I want to trim off excess at the bottom edge by measuring my half length at 16 inches. I'm only leaving 0.5 inches stitching allowance. I'll measure 16.5 inches on the left side, and with that we'll draw a line across these marks, and that's where I'll trim it from. I'm now going to remove pins I used in securing lining and the fabric around the shoulders. Then I'll start working on the neckline part. I'm going to measure the total neckline from this bottom edge to the other edge. I found it to be 45 inches long, so now I'll cut another piece of that length and 7 inches wide. Here is the long piece for the shawl collar, and I'll stitch it on the neckline as the collar. Remember, it's folded into 2 equal parts with the right side, and this is how it's supposed to be stitched in between the lining and the fabric. Take note of how I interchange the lining. This way you'll have a neat finish on both sides. I'll start pinning down. This needs patience since you really have to align both the lining and the fabric as you pin. I'll pin to the other end as I make sure the shawl collar piece stays in between the fabric and the linings. Note that I'm doing the pinning from the inside, guys. This is what I'm talking about, guys. I need to finish on each side of the blouse. After I'm done pinning to the end, I'll stitch on the pinned area all round, and as I do that, I ensure the shoulder lines of the lining and the fabric align. Yeah guys, I'm done stitching the shawl collar all around the neckline and I've ironed. See how neat this is. I want to now work on the peplum part, and to do that, I'll measure the total length I have here on the waistline, which is 40 inches long. I'll now show you how to cut the 720-degree peplum flare. I have this different piece of fabric for that. First, I'll fold it into 2 equal parts with the wrong side, then refold it again this way as I'm doing. And I'm going to fold it the third time. Then I'll fold it again the last time in this manner, in a triangular shape this time. So with that, I'll now count how many pieces I have, which is 8 pieces on the upper section, meaning it's 8 up and 8 down. In total I have 16 pieces. Now I'll take 40 inches, the total length of my waistline, divided by 16, which equals to 2.5. So now I'll measure that 2.5 inches here at the top edge. And while I'm measuring, I'm ensuring the heights on each side are the same. I'll put a mark there, then confirm if the heights are of equal measurements. It's true since it's 3 inches on each side. I'll then measure the total length for the peplum starting from the mark. I'm measuring 8 inches plus 0.5 inches stitching allowance. I'll do the same on the other side as well, measuring 8.5 inches. From there, I'll draw a curve now from the pointed edge like this. I'll do the same on the upper circumference. Once I'm done, I'm going to cut along the drawn curves as you see me doing. And that's it. I now have 2 flares, each is 360 degrees. In total I have 720-degree peplum. We'll now cut on the folded part in order to have an open flare. I'll again divide the second flare to one single straight piece. Having done that, I'll go ahead to iron a gum stay on the wrong side of each flare before joining them to one piece. I'm done ironing the gum stay on the peplum. Here is the point where I joined. I also cut the lining for the peplum. Moving forward, I want to stitch the lining to the fabric. First, I'll put the right sides together from where I joined them. Then I'm going to stitch all around the bottom edge with that 0.5 inches stitching allowance I left when I was cutting. I've already stitched the lining to the fabric as explained, also top stitched on the lining. With that, I'll head over to the sewing machine in order to have the peplum stitched on the waistline. And if you do your math correctly, there shouldn't be any excess. The peplum and the waistline should fit perfectly as mine did. I'm done stitching the peplum to waistline. I'll just put this aside to show you how to fix the straps. I made 2 long 1-inch wide straps and 2 other small ones. Now on the right inner side of the blouse, I'll stitch the first small strap at this point. We'll have the second stitch at this outer wrap. On the outside, I'll stitch the first longer strap on the right wrap. Then the other just at the side, about 1.5 inches away from the side. And we'll have them tied here. So guys, I did a tutorial previously on how to cut and sew this puff sleeve. The link is in the description. Kindly check it out. So guys, the final thing to do is to attach the sleeve and the armhole. I'll quickly show you how to stitch it to the armhole. First, spread the seams around the armpit area. Then also align the seam on the sleeve. Make sure the seams are also spread flat, and I'll just start pinning down from that area and continue pinning all round. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to stitch on this area I pinned, then fix the second sleeve the same way I did on the first. I'm done stitching sleeves, guys. I really love how everything came out neat and well. So here is how to tie the straps. First, the smaller ones from inside, then the larger ones on the outside of the blouse. Please don't forget to subscribe, also like and leave a comment. Let's meet in our next tutorial.